This is my first video update for Wednesday, coming to you from Nicosia, Cyprus. Let's talk about some news. Very, very big news. Just finished watching Putin's it was a pre-recorded address to the Russian people. And I also finished watching the pre-recorded interview with Russian Defense Minister Shoigu. And the big news from Putin's address is the announcement of partial mobilization. A decree has been signed for partial mobilization in Russia. Putin said, and I quote, "Only citizens who are currently in the reserve, and above all, those who served in the armed forces, have certain military specialties and relevant experience, will be subject to conscription for military service. Those called up for military service before being sent to units will undergo additional military training without fail, taking into account the experience of a special military operation." Now I'm going to get into what partial mobilization means. And this is going to come from the interview with Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu. But let's get into some more quotes that Putin said during his speech. He said the legal status of volunteers and militiamen of Donbass should be the same as that of regular Russian military personnel. He said that the goal of the West is to divide and destroy Russia. They made these plans a long time ago, although to turn our country into many disunited and hostile regions, and Ukraine has become an anti-Russian foothold. He also said, we have no moral right to give people close to us to be torn to pieces by the executioner. We cannot fail to respond to their sincere desire to determine their own destiny. He is referencing the planned referendums in Lugansk, Donetsk, Zaporozhye, and Kherson, which will take place between the 23rd and the 27th of September. He said that Russia will support their decisions and that they're going to make sure that the referendums are going to take place in a peaceful, orderly, legal manner. Russia's going to make sure that the referendums take place without any disruptions. He said that we know that the majority of people living in the territories liberated from the neo-Nazis, and this is primarily the historical lands of Novorossiya, do not want to be under the yoke of the neo-Nazi regime. In Zaporozhye, in Kherson region, in Lugansk and Donetsk, they have seen and are seeing the atrocities that neo-Nazis are doing in their occupied areas of the Kharkov region. The heirs of Bandera and Nazi punishers kill people, torture them, throw them in prison, settle scores, and mock civilians. That is a direct quote from Vladimir Putin's speech. Notice that he mentions Novorossiya. He mentions Novorossiya, and he also talks a lot about neo-Nazis. He mentions that word 3-4 times in this quote. He also said that that mobilization measures will start today. So they're starting right away. The mobilized will receive the status of contract soldiers and corresponding salaries. He also said, as I mentioned earlier, that Russia will support decisions made by the residents of Donbass, Zaporozhye, and Kherson regions. Putin then he closed out his speech by warning the collective West. He warned those who carry out nuclear blackmail. That's the term that he used against the Russian Federation. He said that the wind could turn in their direction. Washington is pushing Kiev to transfer hostilities to the territory of the Russian Federation. Nuclear blackmail has been used. When its territorial integrity is threatened, Russia uses all available means. This is not a bluff. That is a quote from Putin as well. This is not a bluff. Obviously, he is referencing the ramped up talk coming from the collective West about this war turning nuclear and Russia using tactical nukes. And Putin is referencing that type of nuclear blackmail that is being used by the collective West. And I believe he's also talking about the fact that there's been a lot of talk in the collective West and rumors that the Biden White House will indeed give long-range missiles to Ukraine. And the rumors are that those long-range missiles, and this is just speculation, that those long-range missiles are currently in Ukraine as we speak. I've heard they're in the Dnipropetrovsk region. Just speculation, just rumors. The Biden White House, Bidenopolis, he has not gone one way or another with regards to, he has not confirmed one way or another with regards to these long-range missiles, nor has the Pentagon confirmed that long-range missiles will be or will not be sent to Ukraine. CNN has said that the Pentagon has ruled it out. Other publications said that they're definitely on their way. So, you know, it's hard to tell, but that's what Putin is referencing here in one of his final quotes from his address. He said, "This is not a bluff." That is a quote. This is not a bluff. So let's actually talk about what Shoigu said, because Shoigu's interview after Putin's speech may be even more interesting. Some of the things that Shoigu said. Once again, as with Putin's speech, Shoigu said that Russia is fighting NATO. He was very specific about that. He talked about how the Russian military, through the special military operation, of which Shoigu mentioned, has forced the military to operate in a very constrained and confined manner. But he said that the special military operation was successful in destroying Ukraine's military capability. But he said that the amount of weapons that have been pouring in from the collective West, NATO weapons, has meant that the Russian forces have had to adjust to the massive amounts of weapons that have been sent to Ukraine. Shoigu said that Ukraine has mobilized nearly 300,000 soldiers, and he also got into the casualty numbers, though. When Shoigu was giving out his casualty numbers, both for Russia and for Ukraine, it's important to note that Shoigu is definitely not counting casualty numbers of the Donbass militia. Obviously, he's not counting in the Wagner group. And when he's referencing Ukraine, I think it's safe to say that he's not counting mercenary deaths, and he's also not counting probably other types of battalions, like say the Azov or Adar guys. That I think is pretty safe to say as well. So I would say that the numbers that Shoigu presented in this interview are very conservative on both sides. But he said that the Ukraine armed forces have lost nearly half of their original manpower. He gave the number of 61,207 deaths and 49,368 wounded. He said that Russia's losses in the course of the conflict total 5,937 deaths. So those are pretty specific numbers, but keep in mind that this is probably a very conservative count. But he also mentioned that 90% of the soldiers wounded, the Russian soldiers wounded, have already returned to service. Now, on partial mobilization, and this is probably the most important part of both speeches and interviews from this morning. Partial mobilization will take place, and it's going to involve only people with military experience and military skills, is what Shoigu said during the interview. He said only reservists with skills are going to be mobilized, and then they're going to be trained so that they can remember their skills. That's what Shoigu said. He said, we're going to train them again for a certain time period so they can remember the skills that they were taught. He gave the number of 300,000 reservists. The reporter asked him the question, what number are we looking at when you say partial mobilization? He said 300,000 reservists will be mobilized. And he said the mobilization is a very small part of the entire Russian military capacity. He mentioned the number of 2.5 million reservists that Russia has. And so this partial mobilization, he said, is around, he gave the number of 1 to 1.5% of Russia's total reserves. So he is adding a lot more context to Putin's announcement of partial mobilization. In summary, we're looking at 300,000 reservists, all of whom have military skills and have very specific skills that are needed by the Russian military. He mentioned that Russia now, and I imagine he's referencing after the referendums take place, that Russia is going to now have to protect a 1,000-kilometer border. He talked about this is actually interesting. He talked about Western leaders in Kiev. This is Shoigu. He mentioned how there are Western leaders currently in Kiev and they're pretty much directing the war. And he mentioned that these Western leaders are constantly pushing the Ukraine military to attack civilian infrastructure. He mentioned schools in Zaporozhye and stuff like that. And he also mentioned that there are thousands of mercenaries, Western mercenaries in Ukraine as well at the moment. And so let me think. Is there anything else from these two interviews that I should get out to everybody? Shoigu said that, this is a quote, Russia is at war with the collective West, since Ukraine itself has long since run out of weapons. That is a direct quote. Russia is at war with the collective West. As part of the mobilization, about 1% of mobilization resources will be involved. That is a direct quote from Shoigu as well. An additional 300,000 reservists will go to the front. And let me see here. From Matvienko, Vladimir Putin informed the Federation Council about the decision to announce partial mobilization in the Russian Federation. A draft commission for partial mobilization has been created in St. Petersburg, headed by Beglov, press service of the governor's administration. So this has been in the works for some time. They're mobilizing today, but this has been in the works, and this has been part of the plan for some time. And timing is everything, I guess. And no doubt that this is connected to Putin's attendance in Uzbekistan at the SCO summit. He spoke with all the important leaders there, from Modi to Xi Jinping. Even Erdogan mentioned in an interview with PBS that Russia is looking to end this conflict quickly. That was a quote from Erdogan with regards to his discussions with Putin. And Erdogan probably got the vibe that something big was up. And no doubt that Putin discussed this with China, with India, and with other SCO partners before he returned to Russia and decided to move forward with a partial mobilization plan that has been in the works for some time. They had everything ready. They had all the documentation, all the decrees, all the paperwork. The entire policy was in place, and here we are. So we're going to get referendums from Lugansk, Donetsk, Zaporozhye, and Kherson, 23rd to 27th of September. Those regions will without a doubt, decide to become part of the Russian Federation. Putin has said in his speech that Russia will support their decision, which means that the Russian Federation will welcome these regions in, and they become part of Russia. And now, following Putin's speech and the various decrees, this special military operation is now under the full control of the Russian military. For the past 6 months, the allies, the Russian military, the Donbas militia, the Wagner group, the Chechens, this is a group of allies that have been fighting a war, a conflict against the Ukraine military. But the Ukraine military is no longer the Ukraine military anymore. It has now become a NATO proxy, a NATO military with NATO weapons and NATO money and NATO commanders and full NATO support. And so Russia is matching this escalation by turning this group of allies into the Russian military, to become part of the Russian military. The Donbas militia, all of these forces are now going to be incorporated into the Russian military. 300,000 reservists will be called up. And Ukraine, this NATO proxy, is now going to have to go up against the full force of the Russian military. And the command of the Russian military, I imagine that they're going to have all of those restraints of the special military operation lifted, and they're going to be able to see this conflict towards its conclusion, whatever those goals may be. Whatever those goals may be, remember what I mentioned earlier in the video, that Putin mentioned Novorossiya. So maybe that's a hint as to what's going on. This has been in the works for a while. Remember when Putin said something along the lines of, we haven't started anything yet? That was his quote, something like that. He said that, when did he say that? I want to say 3 weeks ago or a month ago, but I could be off on my timing there. But that's what he meant. That's what he meant. And he also mentioned in his speech, this was an interesting part, and I'll wrap it up. He mentioned in his speech that, and he said, I'm saying this for the first time. He said, I'm saying this for the first time in public. But in Istanbul, they were close to peace. It seems like they had negotiated a peace settlement, Russia and Ukraine. And Putin mentioned that the West, the collective West, came in and they ruined it. And they told Ukraine not to settle for peace, and instead to escalate. And who does Putin mean? He means Boris Johnson. So once again, we have confirmation, this time coming from the Russian president, that the collective West did indeed spoil a peace that was settled back in April. And that person was Boris Johnson when he traveled to Kiev. So I thought that was an interesting part to his speech. So special military operation. It's not going to become an anti-terrorist operation. We're going to be looking at a partial mobilization. Partial mobilization. They stressed that many times in the speech, and so did Shoigu. Partial mobilization. Actually, Shoigu even said that in Russia, he said, I'm going to preempt many of the questions that I'm going to get. This is what he told the interviewer, by stating that people that are going to college and young men that are attending university and living their lives, they can continue to do that. This is going to be a partial mobilization of reservists. Something that's not uncommon, by the way. This is not uncommon. This is something that the collective West would do. This is something that the United States would do, and probably has done in many instances. This is going to be a partial mobilization of people with training and with military skills. 300,000 people. It's going to be done in stages. Shoigu said this is going to be done in stages as well. Let me read you something from a Telegram channel from the Slaviangrad Telegram channel. And I think they add some context to this 300,000 number. And this is a direct quote from a post that they made. Quote, 300,000. This does not mean that everyone will go into a bayonet attack. Most will never see the enemy, even with binoculars. Most of those called up will become drivers, gunners, suppliers, engineers, and will go to support units. War is roads and life in most cases. Before the howitzer fires, it must be done, taken to the front, fed by the gunner, dig positions for it, bring tons of ammunition, and reconnoiter the target. And still, it is necessary to stand in outfits for protection and observation. So I think this is a repost from a Russian translation of a different Telegram channel. I'm not sure the original Telegram channel this came from. Two majors. Dva majors is the original Telegram channel in Russian, and this has been translated by the Slaviangrad Telegram channel. But anyway, I think that's exactly right. A lot of people are now going to say 300,000. They're going to get sent to the front line. They're going to do this and that. No, that's not going to be the case. Shoigu said it. The Russian military now has to, after the referendums, will have to protect and administer a new border. 1,000 kilometers, new border. And perhaps that border may even change some more as time goes along. Who knows? But they're going to need people with certain skills to not only help the Russians fight the war, but to administer this new territory and this new border. So this post from this Telegram channel is spot on. A lot of these reservists are not even going to see the enemy even with binoculars. I'm not saying all of the 300,000. That's not what this post is saying. It's just saying a lot of these reservists are going to go to Kherson and Zaporozhye and Donbass, and they're going to help administer, protect this new part of the Russian Federation. And so what does this mean for Ukraine? What does this mean for the collective West? Well, they're freaking out. There's no doubt about it. The Spanish Prime Minister yesterday, he said in a speech, an interview or a speech, he said that Russia is at war with the EU. And then he prefaced it by saying they're in an energy war with the EU. So he prefaced that, but he said Russia is at war with the EU. I believe Annalena Baerbock also said that the EU is at war. Macron last night, when there was talk that Putin was going to give his speech last night, instead he postponed it to this morning. But once that news came out, Macron was desperately trying to call the Kremlin, and the Kremlin was like just saying, not now, call us back in a couple of days. You know, when the number one globalist puppet boy, Macron, is desperately trying to call the Kremlin, you know that they're panicking. Absolutely, they're panicking. The UK, I think they've already come out with statements, and they're saying this is, what did they say? This is a dangerous escalation. Well, according to the Russians, NATO's the side that has been escalating. The White House, they said they're not going to recognize the sham referendum. They said this yesterday evening. And basically, you're just going to see a whole bunch of panic. The EU, NATO, the Bidenopoulos White House, the entire collective West are going to say they're not going to recognize the referendum. They're going to say that Russia is escalating. Russia is on war footing. They're going to come out with all of these statements. But really, their choice is one, if you ask me. Escalate or not escalate? I mean, what are the options that the collective West has, that NATO has at this moment in time? They're already fighting a proxy war in Ukraine. They've already given God knows how much money and weapons. I mean, you know, you heard Putin's speech. I read it out to you. They've and what Shoigu said, they've given an incredible amount of weapons and money and support to Ukraine. The only thing left for the collective West to do, for NATO to do, is is to go all in or to pull out. There's rumors, there's talks that Zelensky now is trying to push his military to go into an all-out attack in Kherson and in Zaporozhye, to pull up all the reservists he has, everything he has from Kiev, Odessa, everything, and throw it all towards Kherson, Zaporozhye, and possibly the Donbass. But we're getting reports that the Ukraine military is telling Zelensky, we're not ready for that. Cool down. We can't do that. We're just not prepared for anything like that. But basically, it's just a sense of panic coming from the Zelensky regime, because they're now going to have to go to war with Russia, where for the past 6 months they haven't been at war with Russia, and so that's why you're seeing this panic. So I'm sure throughout the whole day we're going to hear all types of statements coming out from the collective West with regards to this speech and to the mobilization, the partial mobilization, and everything that Putin said. They're going to probably try to find some more areas to sanction, but they really don't have much left. Maybe they're going to try to figure out a way to send more weapons to Ukraine, at least Europe. Maybe they're going to try to squeeze out some more weapons that they have in stockpiles or inventories to send to Ukraine. Not going to make a difference. Long-range missiles, they're probably already there, to be honest. So, and Russia definitely knows if they're there or not. So my feeling is that for them to take this step, they probably already know what the West is looking to cook up, and that is long-range missiles to hit at Russian territory. So I think that the timing is important. Winter is coming. The EU is on the verge of economic collapse. Germany's been deindustrialized. Many EU member states have been deindustrialized. Many EU member states have been demilitarized. Even the Pentagon is warning the Bidenopolis White House to stop sending so many weapons to Ukraine, because you're digging into the U.S. military inventory, and timing is everything. And so this has been in the works, and I think this has been timed at the right moment for Russia to make their big move. It's not full mobilization. It doesn't sound like this is putting Russia in a war footing, in a wartime footing, or putting their economy in some type of war footing, though Putin did mention that the industries now have the go-ahead to crank out more weapons. But of course they've already been doing that, so I don't think that should be any type of change there. But 300,000 troops, 300,000 reservists, partial mobilization, that's the plan. And it looks like that has been the plan that they have had in the works for a while now. So that is the video, everybody. I'm not sure how I'm doing on time, to be quite honest. I think this has been a long video, so I guess I'll leave it there. I probably won't do a clown world, though. I do want to talk about Trudeau's singing Bohemian Rhapsody at the Queen's funeral, either the day before the funeral or the day after. But I really want to do a clown world about that. So maybe I'll do that in my next video. I'll try to do another video update either today or tomorrow. And I think I'll leave this video there. I think we've discussed enough. Coming to you from Nicosia, Cyprus, the Duran.locals.com. Take care.